Hello everyone, and welcome to a journey into the hidden truths of wartime ingenuity. Today, we uncover how a single captured American Jeep in 1942 shattered long-held beliefs about engineering supremacy and revealed a revolutionary approach that would reshape entire nations. Have you ever wondered how a simple vehicle could turn the tide of a global conflict? What if the key to victory wasn't the most sophisticated design but the one built for mass production and ease of repair? Could a modest machine from America outclass German engineering in the brutal deserts of North Africa? Was it possible that the true advantage lay not in the complexity of a weapon but in its simplicity and reliability? And what does this tell us about the nature of technological superiority in war? All these questions converge into one central mystery. How did American manufacturing philosophy, embodied by the Jeep, outperform the meticulous German approach and influence the post-war world? In this video, we will trace the journey from that fateful discovery in the African desert, through the stark contrast in engineering principles, to the profound impact on Germany's rebuilding and the global automotive industry. We will reveal how the seemingly modest Jeep became a symbol of industrial resilience, and how its design philosophy challenged the very notion of technological excellence. Prepare to see how the lessons from a single vehicle changed the course of history, transforming defeat into a blueprint for victory. So, let's begin, because the most revolutionary ideas start where you least expect them, right now. November 12, in the year 1942, amidst the vast and treacherous terrains of the Western Desert in North Africa, an unexpected discovery was made that would challenge long-held assumptions about enemy capabilities. A captured American vehicle lay abandoned near a collapsed British supply convoy, its crew having swiftly fled, abandoning their machine in the face of mounting danger and untenable positions. The usual protocol in such circumstances, either to destroy the vehicle to prevent its use by enemy forces or to leave it behind, was well understood by the Wehrmacht. Yet, the commanding officer of the reconnaissance unit had different thoughts, a desire to understand and perhaps utilize this new piece of equipment if possible. He ordered his most skilled mechanic to examine the vehicle thoroughly, seeking to determine whether it could be repurposed to serve the German war effort. What the core mechanics of the African theater uncovered over the next half hour would profoundly challenge everything they believed about the technological superiority of the German military hardware. The realization did not strike like a sudden revelation or a thunderclap but instead evolved gradually, growing with each detailed inspection and observation. It was a creeping acknowledgement that their preconceived notions about the American engineering on the battlefield might need reevaluation. On the dashboard of the vehicle, a small metal placard read, "Willys MB," a name unfamiliar to the Germans, who knew the Americans broadly referred to it as a Jeep. The first and most startling discovery came when the mechanics removed the hood for a closer look at the engine bay. Unlike many vehicles they had encountered, this compartment was immaculate, meticulously designed for quick and straightforward maintenance that even personnel with minimal mechanical training could perform. The wiring was color-coded, and all the components carried clear labels, pointing to an overarching philosophy of ease of service. The parts were arranged for accessibility, with many requiring no specialized tools for replacement or repair, a stark contrast to the German vehicles, which often demanded complex procedures and specialized equipment. In 2 decades of maintenance work on German military vehicles, the senior mechanic had rarely encountered such thoughtful, user-friendly engineering for field repairs. Every bolt, nut and screw was of standard size, the components seemingly identical to those used across various units of this vehicle's type. This uniformity was no accident. It reflected a deliberate design choice aimed at mass production and ease of replacement. The engine, known as the Go Devil, displaced approximately 134 cubic inches, and produced about 60 horsepower at 4,000 rpm. By German standards, a modest output. Yet, what truly fascinated the mechanics was not merely the specifications but the underlying engineering philosophy. This engine was built not to be the most powerful or the most refined but to be simple, reliable, and easier to produce on a mass scale. This design philosophy meant that even a mechanic with minimal training, armed only with basic tools, could service and repair it efficiently. No need for the highly specialized wrenches, complex procedures, or factory-trained technicians typical of German vehicles. The Americans seemed to have designed this vehicle with the notion that it might be maintained not only by professional mechanics but also by farm boys or factory workers under combat conditions, each capable of keeping this machine operational despite the chaos of war. By November of 1942, a clear contrast had emerged between American and German military vehicle manufacturing philosophies. The Germans prided themselves on highly refined, precision engineering. Vehicles like their Kubalvar, the light transport truck, exemplified this approach. Conversely, the United States produced an astonishing number of nearly 640,000 Jeeps during the war, reflecting their commitment to standardized, simplified, and easily producible machinery. The Germans, on the other hand, managed to produce just over 50,000 Kubalvars, numbers that in themselves told a story of differing priorities. More troubling still was what this disparity revealed. The Jeep embodied the very essence of American manufacturing ingenuity, an elegant system of standardization, reduction of complexity, and mass production suited for semi-skilled laborers using interchangeable parts. This approach allowed the United States to scale production rapidly, keeping maintenance straightforward even in the most challenging battlefield conditions. As the officers continued their examination, they approached the vehicle, contemplating its potential. One officer voiced the question that hung in the air: "So, can we make use of this?" The senior mechanic, thoughtfully choosing his words, responded, "This vehicle is truly remarkable. It's designed by someone who clearly understands the conditions we face in the field." There was a moment of reflection across the group as they considered the implications. Another officer, in a tone tinged with skepticism, countered, "German engineering is considered the finest in the world." The mechanic made no attempt to argue the point but instead pointed to the vehicle's transfer case. He explained, "Look at this. One lever engages four-wheel drive, just a single control. It's straightforward, quick to operate. Our Kubalvar trucks require multiple steps to shift gears, and most lack four-wheel drive altogether." He then elaborated that the primary light vehicle used by the Wehrmacht, the Volkswagen Type 82, it was a vehicle crafted with the meticulous precision characteristic of German engineering, every detail carefully considered and executed. Despite its lightweight construction, making it more nimble than the typical Jeep and consuming less fuel, it boasted an air-cooled engine that eliminated the vulnerability of radiators to enemy fire. Such design choices reflected a focus on practicality and durability. However, there was a significant flaw, one that could not be overlooked. This flaw lay in its drivetrain. It was exclusively rear-wheel drive. While seemingly a minor detail, this feature proved to be a crippling limitation in the challenging terrains of the war. In the soft sands of North Africa, on the steep, rocky slopes of Italy, and across the muddy, treacherous fields of Russia, the vehicle's inability to distribute power to all four wheels at once hampered its effectiveness. In contrast, the American Jeep was equipped with a full-time four-wheel drive system, capable of delivering power to all wheels whenever required, giving it a substantial advantage in rugged conditions. The simplicity of the vehicle's systems was one of its remarkable features. Designed so that even an untrained soldier could learn to operate and understand its mechanics within a matter of minutes, this ease of use was highly valued. The mechanics performed thorough inspections, examining the suspension, which relied on straightforward leaf springs, much less sophisticated than the torsion bars seen in the Kubalvar but far easier to repair in the field. Its electrical system, though basic by modern standards, was designed with durability in mind. The fuel system was versatile and could operate efficiently with nearly any grade of gasoline without requiring any adjustments. Despite these practical features, the most scrutinized aspect was its weight distribution. The Jeep clocked in at roughly 2,450 pounds, whereas the Czech-made Kubalvar weighed approximately 1,540 pounds, a significant difference of about 910 pounds. From a German engineering perspective, this excess weight would be clearly seen as a flaw, likely diminishing performance and increasing fuel consumption. Nonetheless, the American mechanics saw beyond the numbers. They understood that this weight meant strength and resilience. The vehicle's frame was overbuilt, designed to withstand brutal punishment and survive situations that would easily destroy a lighter model. The Americans deliberately prioritized reliability, recognizing that in war, a vehicle's capacity to endure rough treatment and still perform reliably was far more critical than achieving maximum efficiency. They had built this machine with the expectation that it would be misused, overloaded, pushed beyond normal limits, and subjected to conditions that would challenge any engineering standards. Yet, it was engineered to survive such abuse without failure. This approach wasn't a sign of American incompetence, as some propaganda films had suggested, but a testament to pragmatic engineering grounded in the realities of warfare. It was a philosophy that valued robustness and durability over theoretical perfection. After bringing the vehicle back to their forward supply lines, the mechanics set about conducting rigorous, comprehensive tests over the following 3 days. They pushed the vehicle through soft sand, a terrain notoriously difficult for rear-wheel drive vehicles, which often become stuck or require careful maneuvering. Yet, despite these challenges, the Jeep powered through effortlessly. They overloaded it well beyond its rated capacity and subjected it to rigorous treatment, abusing it in ways that would have immobilized most other vehicles. But the Jeep endured it all, unfazed and continuing to perform. In such difficult terrain, where the American vehicle's rear-wheel drive might see other machines bogged down and immobilized, the Jeep simply powered through, thanks in part to its low-range gearing. This feature enabled the vehicle to crawl over obstacles at a walking pace, something the Czech vehicle's reduction hubs could not match despite their technical sophistication. Word of its performance spread rapidly among the Afrika Corps. It became evident that the American vehicle outperformed the German equivalent in nearly every critical aspect. Officers and mechanics from different units flocked to examine it, eager to understand its success. Their reactions followed a pattern. They initially doubted, then grudgingly admired, and finally, faced with its capabilities, acknowledged the stark reality. One particular officer, a supply officer who had previously worked in German automotive factories before the war, spent an entire afternoon analyzing the vehicle. His assessment was direct and unvarnished. This reveals a fundamental difference in our methods. We craft vehicles with the aim of achieving engineering perfection, emphasizing refinement and optimal performance. The Americans, however, design with manufacturing in mind, prioritizing ease of production, robustness, and practicality over perfect engineering. In total war, that approach has far greater importance. He explained this perspective to the assembled officers, emphasizing that in the harsh and unpredictable realities of war, the ability to produce reliable, durable vehicles at scale was more crucial than having the most refined or sophisticated design. This philosophy, built into the American model, meant prioritizing resilience and ease of repair over the lofty ideals of perfection, an approach that often meant the difference between a vehicle that survives and one that fails under pressure. Sirs and NCOs, immersed in the intricate details of their craft, began to grasp the true significance of the differences in manufacturing philosophies. Consider the engine block, an unassuming component, yet one revealing the profound contrast between American and German methodologies. The Americans cast their engine blocks in simple molds, deliberately sacrificing the highest possible tolerances and intricate finishing for the sake of speed and volume. Unlike their German counterparts, who would meticulously machine each part to exact specifications, the Americans prioritized rapid production over perfection, understanding that in a war of attrition, consistency and quantity could outweigh absolute precision. This approach allowed even semi-skilled workers to assemble these engines swiftly, perhaps in a matter of hours, drastically reducing the time from manufacturing to deployment. Imagine scaling that efficiency across all the critical components of their vehicles. The officer's gaze shifted to the stamped metal body panels, rough, utilitarian sheets that served as the shell of their combat vehicles. Compared to German craftsmanship, these panels appeared crude, lacking the refined finish and tight tolerances typical of German engineering. However, their simplicity meant they could be mass-produced in factories that previously manufactured everyday appliances, refrigerators, washing machines, and other household goods, all rapidly converted to supply the needs of a burgeoning wartime economy. The vast mobilization of American industry was staggering. Every factory that once made consumer goods was now repurposed for military production. This included thousands of plants, from small workshops to large-scale assembly lines, all working tirelessly to produce military hardware at rates previously unimaginable. The Germans, with their more measured and precision-oriented approach, found themselves unable to match such massive capacity. Their industrial base lacked the flexibility and sheer scale to produce at comparable speeds, especially when the American factories could churn out thousands of vehicles per day. As the officers listened, a sinking realization settled over the room. The officers' words encapsulated a truth that many had begun to suspect. Germany's focus on quality and precision, ideal in times of peace when perfection is achievable, now faced the harsh reality of wartime necessity. The American doctrine of producing adequate, reliably functioning equipment en masse and delivering it rapidly proved devastatingly effective in the chaos of total war. That evening, a dedicated mechanic at the front took to pen and paper, composing a detailed technical report. He meticulously described every facet of the Jeep's design, pinpointing its strengths that made it reliable in harsh conditions, but also noting weaknesses that could be improved. This report was one among thousands, documents painstakingly gathered by German technical intelligence units. Many similar analyses flooded into the command headquarters from every theater of the war, each one revealing a disturbing trend. The American vehicles and machinery were increasingly outpacing German production. German engineers and mechanics reported encountering American trucks, jeeps, and weapons more frequently, and their evaluations uniformly confirmed that the Americans had gained a decisive edge. Their capacity to produce military hardware at staggering rates, often in the thousands each day, was nearly beyond belief. By the end of 1942, the German War Intelligence Services commissioned comprehensive studies into Allied vehicle manufacturing capabilities. The data confirmed their worst fears. American factories alone, at peak output, were turning out thousands of vehicles each day. For instance, the Ford plant at Willow Run, which had metamorphosed from a bomber manufacturing line into a mammoth production facility, was assembling a B-24 Liberator bomber roughly every 63 minutes, a pace that defied previous expectations. Meanwhile, American shipyards were launching Liberty ships at a rate faster than German U-boats could sink them, rapidly building a relentless logistical backbone for Allied operations worldwide. The stark numbers painted a sobering picture. In 1942, America's military vehicle production not only matched but surpassed the combined output of Germany, Italy, and Japan. And this was just the beginning. The ramp-up in production was ongoing and accelerating. The captured Jeep, once a mere piece of equipment, soon became a symbol of American ingenuity and technological superiority among soldiers. It garnered a reputation as a reliable workhorse, and soldiers competed fiercely for the opportunity to drive it, one of the few vehicles that reliably performed under the brutal conditions of desert warfare. Officers relied on the Jeep for forward reconnaissance missions, often trusting its dependability more than their own larger, more complex vehicles. When parts wore out, they were often scavenged from other captured Jeeps, exchanged and swapped with startling ease because every component was designed to be interchangeable, a testament to American manufacturing philosophy. By early 1943, the desert campaigns saw dozens of Jeeps fall into the hands of the Axis forces. The German technicians and mechanics who had encountered American vehicles in the past now formed informal networks, sharing maintenance knowledge and sourcing parts from captured equipment. A budding black market also emerged, where well-functioning Jeeps and American weapons could fetch prices far exceeding their apparent value, in large part because everyone recognized their undeniable superiority in desert conditions. It was a tangible proof of how American industrial might and logistical flexibility were reshaping the battlefield, disrupting German expectations and challenging their traditional notions of quality corps to move, lined up neatly in rows. The scene conveyed a sense of relentless efficiency, an impressive display of American industrial strength translated into military logistics. The young soldiers, hardly past adolescence, navigated the busy yard with practiced ease, performing maintenance tasks with a level of confidence that belied their age. Tools were never scarce. They were everywhere, meticulously organized and easily accessible, facilitating swift repairs and routine servicing alike. Parts arrived with remarkable speed, undelayed by red tape, and all components shared standard designs, allowing even the most inexperienced mechanic to carry out basic repairs with minimal instruction. One particularly observant American sergeant, who could speak a conversational amount of German, noticed a captured mechanic of German origin watching the activities with keen interest. Turning to him, the sergeant broke the ice with casual friendliness, asking, "You a mechanic?" The German prisoner nodded and replied, "I was Africa Corps vehicle maintenance," referencing his previous experience in North Africa. The sergeant chuckled warmly, noting, "Well, no war for you now, but I have a feeling you've got some questions." He then invited the mechanic for a more in-depth look around the motor pool, emphasizing a relaxed tone. "Come on, I'll show you around, nothing to steal anymore, so you might as well learn." What ensued was an informal but illuminating educational exchange. As they wandered through the rows of vehicles, the sergeant shared insights into American maintenance philosophy with candid honesty. He explained that everything the Army built was intentionally designed to be simple enough for a farm boy to repair, since most of the young men who manned these vehicles had never even seen an engine before basic training. "Most of our guys have no more than a 6th grade reading level," So we keep instructions straightforward, color-coded wires, standard bolts, labels everywhere. So anyone can fix it, he said. He pointed out the manuals, which contained detailed illustrations and step-by-step instructions suitable for someone with minimal mechanical knowledge. If something breaks down, any regular soldier can handle the repairs without waiting for a specialist, he added. The captured German mechanic examined a disassembled Jeep engine with growing interest. Every part was marked clearly, and the maintenance manual offered intricate diagrams and step-by-step guidance accessible even to a novice. Asked about production volumes, the sergeant shrugged nonchalantly. Hell, I don't have an exact count, but thousands of these Jeeps roll off the lines every week. They're coming faster than we can ship them out. The scale of American military vehicle production was staggering. Enough Jeeps that if one broke down, soldiers would often simply grab another instead of repairing the damaged vehicle immediately. The sheer numbers seemed almost unbelievable, yet, everywhere the evidence confirmed the incredible capacity of American manufacturing. The motor pool's inventory extended beyond just Jeeps. There were numerous trucks, including Dodge models capable of hauling loads that would require the combined efforts of 2 entire German corps to move. These trucks were lined up in perfect rows, a testament to both industrial capacity and organizational precision. Despite this being just one small American unit at a forward supply base, the volume and diversity of vehicles underscored the vast logistical network supporting the Allied war effort. The scene exemplified a level of efficiency that not only outmatched anything the German forces had managed in their prisoner processing centers but also reflected the relentless industrial drive fueling the Allied victory in the war. An extensive stockpile readily available. If a specific component was not in stock, it could often be replaced with an interchangeable part from another vehicle or cannibalized from a damaged unit. This approach minimized downtime and kept the entire fleet operational. Meanwhile, the American approach to vehicle repair and maintenance was fundamentally pragmatic. It was less about perfection and more about swift, effective solutions. Mechanics were not necessarily specialized engineers but skilled problem solvers who understood the importance of being resourceful. When a vehicle encountered failure, they identified the quickest way to get it back into service, often improvising with whatever tools and parts they had at hand. If an individual component was beyond repair, they would remove it entirely and replace it with a suitable substitute, often borrowing parts from other vehicles or units that were already out of service. These replacement parts sometimes arrived at their destinations within a matter of days, an efficiency that German maintenance practices, which relied heavily on specialized tools and precise procedures, could not match during the chaos of war. The insights gained by the captured German mechanics were telling. German maintenance training emphasized adherence to factory specifications, which demanded specific tools and meticulous procedures that worked well in peacetime or under calm conditions. However, in the frantic environment of war, American maintenance techniques, more flexible and improvisational, proved far superior. The American motor pool at Camp Hearn processed hundreds of vehicles monthly, whether Jeeps requiring routine checks or larger trucks scheduled for repair. The turnaround time for repairs often amounted to just hours rather than days, demonstrating the extraordinary efficiency of their system built on surplus parts and interchangeable components. The scale and scope of American industrial and logistical capabilities were on full display throughout the country. Vehicles, trucks, and military supplies were in constant flux, filling factories, lining highways in long, orderly convoys, and sitting in depots waiting for deployment. The port at Norfolk, Virginia, stood as a testament to this capacity, moving thousands of tons of supplies every day with mechanisms that operated seamlessly. Cranes lifted heavy cargoes with precision speed that would have required entire armies of workers in other parts of the world, particularly in Germany. Trains transported prisoners in luxurious passenger cars, a stark contrast to the austere conditions of wartime Europe. Everywhere, vehicles were a regular sight, filling parking lots outside factories, lining convoy routes that stretched for miles, and stacking up in depots, ready to be sent to the front lines. At Camp Hearn in Texas, the presence of experienced mechanics volunteering in the motor pool underscored the importance of the vehicle fleet to the overall war effort. The American commanders actively welcomed their expertise, recognizing that the quick and reliable maintenance of vehicles was crucial to keeping operations running smoothly. Throughout the following 2 years, German mechanics working alongside American soldiers learned firsthand the robustness of American maintenance practices, even as they continued to follow their own more rigid and precise methods rooted in peacetime traditions. In contrast, the American approach prioritized practicality above all. When a vehicle showed signs of trouble, the repair process focused on immediate rectification rather than perfection. Quick fixes, improvised repairs, and the use of interchangeable parts enabled the machines to stay in service without long delays. This pragmatic mindset proved essential in wartime, where rapid turnaround and operational readiness took precedence over meticulous perfection. It was a lesson that the Germans, despite their technological advancements and disciplined approach, gradually realized they could not match in the chaotic environment of global conflict. The observed efficiency at the Camp Hearn motor pool exemplified the broader American strategy of leveraging abundance and flexibility to maintain an enormous fleet of vehicles, ranging from lightly equipped jeeps to heavy-duty trucks and specialized military equipment. The ability to rapidly service, repair, and replace parts kept the logistics pipeline flowing smoothly, providing a critical advantage in the ongoing war effort. This swift and resilient system of vehicle maintenance was a core element of American military strength, often underestimated by adversaries, but fundamental to the success of their campaigns across oceans and continents. In the everyday operations of the factory, the inventory was kept well stocked, with dozens of essential parts and materials always readily available. Whenever a tool was needed for a specific task, the tool room was quick to provide it without delay, ensuring that production lines remained uninterrupted. In cases where a vehicle reached the end of its service life and could no longer be repaired, it was promptly replaced by another, keeping the workflow consistent and efficient. During this time, a chance friendship formed between a German mechanic and an American soldier, the latter of whom had previously worked for the Ford Motor Company before the outbreak of the war. The American soldier demonstrated extensive knowledge about the automotive industry, recalling his experience working on the assembly line at Willow Run. This enormous plant, built by Ford just outside Detroit, was the largest factory in the world at that time. It was specifically designed for mass production, particularly of B-24 Liberator bombers. Production had begun in the year of 42, and by the time the soldier was drafted the following year, the plant was producing a new bomber roughly every 60 minutes. This meant that an entire 4-engine heavy bomber, fully assembled, was emerging from the line every single hour. The scale of this achievement was truly staggering. It translated to around 24 bombers produced per day, which amounted to over 700 every month. How was such an incredible level of efficiency possible? The answer lay in the principles of mass production, pioneered by Henry Ford himself. Ford had revolutionized manufacturing by devising methods to deconstruct complex products into simple, repeatable steps. The core idea was that skilled craftsmanship was no longer necessary for every individual task. Instead, workers could be trained to perform a single, straightforward function repeatedly. For example, a young worker fresh from a farm could be trained in just 1 week to install a specific bolt into one designated spot. When thousands of such workers performed their isolated tasks in unison, the overall output expanded exponentially. This approach contrasted sharply with the German method of manufacturing, which depended heavily on highly skilled craftsmen producing smaller quantities of superior, meticulously assembled products. American manufacturing, by contrast, relied on semi-skilled workers assembling good enough products in enormous volumes. The American soldier elaborated further by taking the example of Jeep production. Both Willys Overland and Ford were manufacturing Jeeps according to identical specifications. The design of a Willys Jeep and a Ford Jeep was fully interchangeable, a single model that could be produced by either company without modification. This level of standardization meant that if one plant was hit by bombs or faced operational issues, the other could continue to supply vehicles without interruption. Maintenance was simplified because mechanics only needed to learn how to repair one type of vehicle, instead of dozens of different variants with unique parts and systems. This starkly contrasted with the German approach to vehicle logistics. The Wehrmacht relied on a vast array of different trucks from multiple manufacturers, each with its own set of spare parts and maintenance requirements. Their fleet included command cars from various sources, captured vehicles from across Europe, and specialized vehicles with distinct parts, creating a logistical nightmare of incompatible systems and complex spare parts networks. In comparison, American logistics benefited immensely from the principle of uniformity. Every vehicle was designed with manufacturability in mind from the outset. When the military issued the specifications for the Jeep in the year of 40, they gave factories only 75 days to produce a working prototype. The American company Bantam responded by delivering a functional prototype in just 49 days. Subsequently, Willys and Ford refined the design further, optimizing it for mass production. The entire process was rooted in simplicity. The vehicles had to be easy to manufacture, straightforward to maintain, and simple to repair in the field. Even captured German mechanics, who had examined many Jeeps, recognized this. They observed that the vehicle wasn't particularly elegant or sophisticated, unlike the German designs, which often emphasized refined engineering, but this simplicity was precisely what allowed for rapid and large-scale production. German engineers might have aimed for a more sophisticated vehicle, but in the real-world context of wartime mass production, that sophistication became a hindrance. Speed and efficiency in manufacturing proved more critical to the war effort, and American industry was clearly winning that technological race. By the summer of the year of 44, prisoners of war had begun to hear whispers and rumors of Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Normandy. When news finally reached them of the successful landing and breakthrough, many of them felt unsurprised. The overwhelming logistical and manufacturing capabilities of the Allies had already signaled that victory was within reach, and the invasion was viewed as the culmination of years of relentless industrial and military preparation. The Germans possessed the industrial capacity to assemble an invasion fleet that would have taken years for their adversaries to build from scratch. This formidable capability was not hidden. Intelligence reports, along with information carried through American newspapers and radio broadcasts, painted a clear picture of the overwhelming scale of Allied logistical operations. Within these broadcasts, accounts detailed the massive landings on the beaches of Normandy, where the initial assault involved thousands of vehicles in the first wave alone, jeeps, trucks, tanks, and amphibious vehicles, each meticulously transported across the English Channel in purpose-built landing craft. Remarkably, these landing crafts themselves were produced in their thousands, exemplifying the astonishing scale of wartime manufacturing. The sheer magnitude of the Allied invasion efforts was almost beyond human comprehension, a testament to the industrial might that underpinned their military advances. The initial amphibious assault involved a staggering number of ships, 6,000 in total, supported by 11,000 aircraft, and an initial wave of more than 150,000 soldiers. Within a matter of weeks, this enormous mobilization expanded, with millions of Allied troops actively engaged across the European continent. All of this military activity was sustained by an extensive production infrastructure capable of manufacturing equipment at a pace that outstripped the destruction inflicted by the German Wehrmacht. German prisoners, observing the relentless flow of American war materiel, often reflected on their earlier overconfidence in victory, a confidence rooted in their assumptions about technological superiority. This belief in Germany's technological edge had been a significant part of their wartime strategy. They held that their engineering capabilities, particularly in weaponry and vehicles, outclassed those of their enemies. German tanks, for instance, were more heavily armored and armed than many of their American counterparts, and German aircraft often showcased more advanced design features and sophistication. Additionally, German small arms were considered among the finest in the world. Despite these technological advantages, the Germans' confidence was ultimately undermined by the overwhelming scale of American industrial output. The stark reality was that the United States was producing vehicles at a rate that rendered German efforts almost insignificant in comparison. For every one tank the Germans managed to produce, America was manufacturing 5. Similarly, the Americans built 10 trucks for every German-made vehicle and 100 jeeps for every Kubalvar, the German term for their standard military vehicle. One afternoon, in a motor pool within an American camp in Texas, prisoners of war watched with a mix of curiosity and dismay as American soldiers systematically loaded jeeps onto transport trucks, preparing them for shipment to Europe. The young private driving each jeep up the ramps carried himself with casual confidence, as if it were just another routine day. Yet this seemingly simple operation encapsulated the enormity of the American war effort. In less than an hour, dozens of vehicles, jeeps, trucks, and other military machines were loaded and ready to ship across the Atlantic, destined to replace losses and equip new units on the front lines. A German mechanic, observing the scene, realized that this single loading operation at one far-flung camp in Texas represented more vehicles than his entire division had possessed during their campaign in North Africa. The scale of such logistical feats was no longer theoretical, it was a daily reality across American camps and depots nationwide. Every day, similar scenes played out, illustrating the vast capacity of American industry to sustain their war machine. Mathematically, these differences became impossible to ignore. Despite Germany's total war mobilization, stripping civilian manufacturing sectors to support their military, by 1943, German military vehicle production had totaled fewer than 100,000 vehicles of all types. Meanwhile, in the same year, America, with its prosperous civilian economy, produced well over 2 million military vehicles. The disparity was staggering, not merely in numbers but also in the quality of vehicles produced. American wartime vehicles were specifically designed to meet the harsh demands of sustained combat. They were built for ease of maintenance, featuring interchangeable parts that simplified repairs, straightforward operation, and rugged reliability, ensuring they could endure the rigors of battle. German vehicles, on the other hand, had been engineered with designs suited more for peacetime efficiency, often adhering to meticulous specifications that proved impractical once the realities of prolonged conflict set in. These engineering choices, while perhaps advantageous in a peacetime scenario, became liabilities on the battlefield, impeding the German army's ability to keep their vehicles operational and effectively support their operations. In November of 1944, news reached the American camp about a significant German offensive in the Ardennes forest, later famously known as the Battle of the Bulge. This marked Hitler's last major gamble in the Western theater, and the Germans depended heavily on capturing American fuel supplies, as their own dwindling reserves made sustained armored operations increasingly untenable. Reports also emerged of Operation Grief, a clandestine German commando operation led by Otto Skorzeny, which involved the use of captured American equipment, an effort that underscored the Germans' desperation and their attempts to leverage captured materiel amidst their dwindling resources. The unfolding scenes chronicled a war equipped with captured jeeps, dressed in American-style uniforms, and armed with forged identification papers. A small German unit was tasked with penetrating the lines of the Allies. Their mission was to sow chaos, gather intelligence, and aim to seize strategically important bridges behind enemy lines. This clandestine operation was born out of desperation, revealing much about the dire state of the German military resources and morale. For instance, even high-profile figures like Skorzeny, the renowned commando favored by Hitler and credited with rescuing Mussolini, had to rely on captured American vehicles because the Germans simply lacked sufficient military equipment of their own. This fact starkly exposed the severe shortages and logistical failures plaguing the Wehrmacht. Despite the meticulous planning, the infiltration effort was ultimately unsuccessful. It was quickly unraveled when American military police, through astute and detailed questioning about American customs, routines, and military procedures, managed to identify the German infiltrators with ease. The detection marked the beginning of the end of the Ardennes offensive, a crucial campaign which, despite fierce resistance from American troops, ground to a halt not solely because of the strength of Allied forces but largely due to the Germans running out of fuel. As supply chains faltered, the panzer divisions faced a dire situation. With fuel trucks delayed or failing to arrive, many German tanks and vehicles were abandoned in the muddy fields, left to rust or be captured. Meanwhile, the infantry units, deprived of motorized transport, began to rely on horse-drawn wagons and carts, a stark reminder of the collapse of Germany's once formidable mechanized logistics. By the beginning of January in the year 1945, the German offensive had been pushed back significantly, with much of the territory they had gained being reclaimed by the advancing Allies. The situation continued to deteriorate throughout that winter and into the spring, culminating in the general collapse of German resistance. The spring of that year, 1945, brought the grim news of Germany's defeat and dismantling. From the east, the Red Army encircled Berlin, tightening its grip around the German capital, while from the west, American and British forces crossed the Rhine River, driving deep into the heart of Germany's territory. In the chaos of ongoing battles and the wreckage of wartime industry, German mechanics at the military repair depots persisted in their tasks. They tirelessly maintained the remaining vehicles, jeeps, trucks, and armored cars, serving an army that had already defeated their homeland. Neither feelings of pride nor shame marked their work. They did it because they had no choice. They understood clearly that Germany's defeat was not rooted in a lack of courage or technical skill among its soldiers but was a consequence of challenging a supply capacity that they could neither match nor outproduce. One quiet afternoon in April, An American officer approached a group of these mechanics with news that would forever change their perspective. Word had come that Germany had officially surrendered, ending all hostilities in Europe. The war was over. The mechanics, exhausted and resigned, simply nodded in acknowledgement. They had suspected this outcome for many months, yet hearing it confirmed was a quiet, sobering moment. Many of them wondered what implications lay ahead for them now. The officer tried to reassure them, explaining, "You'll eventually go home. Not right away, of course. There's a lot of logistical work to do before that can happen, but returning home is inevitable." The mechanics wrestled with this idea, returning to a homeland shattered beyond recognition. The cities bombed into ruins, streets torn apart, their landscapes scarred by the relentless firepower of the very factories that once produced their equipment. This was the Germany they knew, defeated, occupied, and broken. In a reflective moment, the American officer turned to one of the mechanics and casually asked, "Did you really think Germany could win?" The mechanic hesitated, carefully considering his response. Before the war, he admitted, yes, they believed German engineering and quality would somehow prevail over American production capacity. "We'd seen American products before the conflict began, and many of them were inferior compared to German equivalents," he explained, recalling the pre-war confidence. "We thought that German military equipment would be superior across the board. But we were mistaken." He paused, then continued, "When we examined that first Jeep in '42, we realized we had made a fundamental error. An error rooted in misjudging the nature of wartime manufacturing." He explained that Germans had conflated high-quality peacetime engineering with the demands of total war. The German vehicles, while well-made, were designed for efficiency and durability in normal conditions. The American Jeeps, on the other hand, were optimized for mass production and ruggedness, able to be manufactured quickly and to perform reliably under the harshest field conditions. That distinction, he emphasized, proved decisive in the conflict's outcome. The American officer nodded in understanding, acknowledging that his country's ability to produce adequate, functional hardware swiftly after months of wandering in the aftermath of war. The veteran found himself in Bremen, a city still scarred by the inferno of conflict. It was January of 1946 when he finally arrived, processed through the agents overseeing Allied control, before being permitted to move freely within the war-ravaged landscape. Everywhere he looked, the city lay in ruins, streets were fractured and strewn with debris, a testament to the devastation wrought upon it. Yet amid the chaos and destruction, a curious observation caught his eye. American vehicles, unmistakable in their design, seemed to be occupying every corner of the shattered cityscape. Jeeps and trucks, manned by American officers and soldiers, navigated the broken streets with purpose, delivering relief supplies, patrolling the ruins, and executing the vast effort of rebuilding. In some areas, motor pools thrived where German civilians, perhaps seeking normalcy or employment, worked side by side with Allied military personnel, sharing tools and labor in a scene that was both strange and hopeful. Drawn by a sense of necessity, he approached one such motor pool, seeking entry and answers. There, he introduced himself to the American officer in charge, a captain, using the limited but practical English he had learned during years of captivity and hardship. "Sir," he began respectfully, "I am a former Oberfeldwebel of the Africa Corps, recently repatriated from Camp Hearn in Texas. I am a trained vehicle mechanic, with experience in maintaining American military equipment. I was wondering if you are currently hiring civilian workers?" The captain scrutinized his identification papers carefully. They confirmed his background, 2 years of work in an American motor pool in Texas. The officer then looked up at him with a hint of a smile and a degree of interest. "You worked in our motor pool back in Texas?" "That's right, isn't it?" "Yes, sir. 2 years," he replied simply. The captain nodded, making a note on a pad. "We're desperate for mechanics here. Most of the German mechanics either perished during the war or still kept in prisoner camps. You can start working with us tomorrow." He explained further that the pay would be in occupation script, tokens that could be exchanged for rations and necessary supplies, an uncertain but vital form of income in these difficult times. Thus, the former Africa Corps mechanic found himself employed by the very army he had fought against, an unexpected turn that underscored the complex realities of post-war reconstruction. He was now tasked with maintaining the same vehicles he once regarded as enemy gear, an embodiment of the chaos and strange reconciliation that war's aftermath could create. The Allied forces, it seemed, recognized their urgent need for skilled labor, and somehow he, a German veteran, had become part of that rebuilding effort. As days turned into months, he bore witness to the slow but determined process of Germany's recovery. American aid, meticulously organized and directed, flowed into the country: food, medicine, construction supplies, delivered efficiently by American trucks and distributed through a systematic plan that mirrored the organizational prowess that had led the Allied victory. Every delivery was a symbol of hope, every vehicle a vital instrument in restoring life to a shattered nation. Within the motor pool, he took on the role of trainer, passing on American maintenance techniques to young Germans eager to learn new skills. To many of his students, these skills were essential. They were former soldiers of the Wehrmacht, men who had once fought with their own military, now needing civilian expertise to navigate a future without war. He shared with them his observations. The American approach emphasized simplicity over elaborate sophistication, focused on functionality rather than aesthetic perfection, and prioritized results over theoretical ideals. These lessons, gleaned from American vehicle design, became templates for rebuilding German manufacturing capability. By 1947, he had earned a promotion, becoming supervisor of the motor pool's German civilian staff, a position that honored both his technical knowledge and organizational abilities. His relationship with the American captain grew respectful. The officer recognized his value, trusting his judgment and leadership in managing the workforce. One evening, the captain invited him to join a quiet moment in his office, sharing a drink as a gesture of camaraderie. After a careful pause, the commander ventured into a philosophical question. "I've been thinking about something," he said thoughtfully. "Considering your extensive experience with both German and American vehicles, if you were tasked with designing a new vehicle for Germany's post-war needs, what would it look like?" He contemplated the question for a moment, weighing the realities of the European environment and the lessons learned through his service. "I would adapt the American approach to suit European circumstances," he replied slowly. "It would be smaller than a Jeep and more fuel-efficient, yet retain the same core principles: simple parts, easy maintenance, and a design focused on ease of manufacturing rather than complex engineering. Europe has narrow roads and limited fuel resources, but it still needs reliable vehicles. The goal should be practicality, durability, and straightforwardness." He nodded thoughtfully, acknowledging the insight with a nod that conveyed both understanding and agreement. It was a clever insight. The infusion of American financial aid through the Marshall Plan was set to ignite a remarkable transformation in West Germany's industrial landscape. The funds would serve as the catalyst to reconstruct and modernize German manufacturing capabilities, which had been severely damaged during the war. Interestingly, Many German engineers were already rudimentarily familiar with American technical methods, having begun studying and adapting to this new approach even before aid fully materialized. Their goal was clear: to develop a future rooted in the American style of mass production, but carefully tailored to suit the unique conditions and needs of their local industries. This vision, initially prophetic, proved to be remarkably accurate. Over the ensuing decades, West German manufacturing systems wholeheartedly embraced the American philosophy of production efficiency, yet they balanced this with an unwavering focus on maintaining high standards of quality, an attribute deeply ingrained in German engineering tradition. The combined effect was nothing short of revolutionary. It sparked an economic renaissance that elevated Germany from the depths of wartime devastation to the status of an economic powerhouse. Enterprises such as Volkswagen, which had originally produced the Kubalwagen during the war for military purposes, evolved dramatically during this period. They grew into some of the most influential and expansive automotive corporations in the world by blending the meticulous precision characteristic of German engineering with the efficiency of American mass production techniques. The Volkswagen Beetle, in particular, became an iconic symbol, one of the best-selling automobiles in history, renowned for breaking barriers in affordability and mass market appeal. Its successful design was simple, reliable, easy to produce in vast quantities, and accessible to the average family, a perfect illustration of this successful synthesis. The transformation was also influenced heavily by the return of former Wehrmacht mechanics, many of whom had worked in the motor pools of American prisoner of war camps. Upon returning to Germany, they brought with them a wealth of invaluable knowledge. They had a clear understanding of component standardization, which meant parts could be used across different vehicles, simplifying production and maintenance. They had witnessed firsthand how well-organized parts distribution systems could keep assembly lines moving smoothly and reduce downtime. Moreover, they had observed that simplifying maintenance procedures increased the overall availability and lifespan of vehicles. They understood that designing vehicles not for absolute perfection, but for manufacturability, making them easier and quicker to produce, was a crucial principle to enable large-scale manufacturing. These insights, accumulated through years of maintaining American equipment, profoundly shaped German automotive design and manufacturing philosophies for decades to come. Instead of trying to recreate pre-war approaches that emphasized bespoke craftsmanship or overly complex engineering, these German manufacturers chose a different path. They decided to fuse German precision engineering with the efficiencies of American-style mass production techniques. This hybrid approach proved to be remarkably effective. By the early 1950s, evidence of its success was clear. Volkswagen's yearly production soared from mere thousands of units to hundreds of thousands, and luxury manufacturers like Mercedes-Benz began adjusting their assembly line techniques to include these new efficiencies, all while upholding their reputation for quality. BMW, too, restructured its manufacturing processes to emphasize component commonality across different models, facilitating quicker production cycles and reducing costs. The economic miracle of the 1950s and 60s, an extraordinary period of growth and prosperity, was rooted largely in these revolutionary changes in manufacturing approach. West Germany swiftly transformed into a dominant exporter, shipping vehicles worldwide that seamlessly combined durability with affordability. This synthesis of German craftsmanship and American industrial efficiency yielded products that neither nation's pre-war industrial philosophy could have produced independently. It was a new, unified manufacturing paradigm. This transformation and the principles behind it were so impactful that even historians of the United States Army recognized their significance. Hugh M. Cole, a noted historian specializing in military logistics, conducted interviews with Wehrmacht generals after their surrender. He documented their perspectives, noting that what German military leaders admired most in American equipment was the ubiquitous Jeep. Not the formidable B-17 bombers, nor the Sherman tanks, or the artillery pieces. What truly captured their admiration was this simple, seemingly modest vehicle. The Jeep symbolized the manufacturing philosophy that had ultimately contributed to Allied victory in the war. Its design embodied efficiency, simplicity, and reliability, traits that had a profound impact not only on military logistics but also on the post-war global industrial landscape. General George C. Marshall himself once referred to the Jeep as America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. His words carried weight because they encapsulated much more than just a vehicle. The Jeep represented a set of principles that fundamentally transformed both military logistics and civilian manufacturing worldwide. It stood for standardization, simplified production processes, and a relentless emphasis on creating durable, reliable products rather than overly sophisticated or unnecessary complexity. These principles laid the foundation for post-war industrial recovery, enabling nations like Germany to rebuild and flourish long after the end of hostilities. In the year 1943, the United States Army accumulated a vast repository of knowledge concerning the workings and maintenance of captured German wagons known as Kubalwagons. This extensive data eventually culminated in the publication of a comprehensive technical manual, designated TME 9803. This manual served as a detailed guide for the operation and upkeep of these German vehicles, providing American soldiers and mechanics with vital information during the tumultuous years of the Second World War. The manual saw its official release on the 6th of June in 1944. A date forever etched into history as D-Day, the day Allied forces launched their massive invasion of Normandy. The publication of this manual proved instrumental, as it enabled the Allied troops who landed on French soil to effectively utilize any Kubalwagen they managed to seize, converting captured enemy equipment into valuable assets on the battlefield. In stark contrast to this meticulous approach, the Wehrmacht never deemed it necessary to publish an equivalent manual for the ubiquitous German Jeep, despite the fact that countless units had captured thousands of these vehicles throughout the war. The reason for this omission lay in the fundamental design philosophy behind the Jeep, which prioritized simplicity and ease of understanding. The Jeep's design was so straightforward, so intuitive, that any mechanic, whether German or otherwise, could grasp its workings and perform maintenance without reference to a complex manual. This design choice contrasted sharply with the intricate engineering of the Kubalwagen, which demanded detailed, translated manuals for proper operation by foreign mechanics unfamiliar with many of its systems. This divergence in approach vividly illustrated a core difference in military vehicle philosophy: the German emphasis on sophistication and detailed documentation versus the American emphasis on simplicity, ease of repair, and manufacturing efficiency. The Kubalwagen represented a vehicle built with layered complexity, requiring extensive manuals and specialized knowledge. Conversely, the Jeep embodied a design that relied on basic principles, enabling quick and effective maintenance without the need for detailed instructions. The design philosophy of the Jeep allowed it to be operated with minimal training, and repair parts could be produced easily and in large quantities, adaptively fitting the demands of wartime logistics. Beginning in the 1960s, former soldiers and officers from the African campaign began gathering periodically, sharing memories and reflecting on their wartime experiences. They would meet in informal reunions, reminiscing about the vehicles of their campaigns and the realities of the battlefield. One such reunion in 1967 featured an impromptu discussion about the different vehicles they had encountered during the war. An experienced mechanic, perhaps in his late 60s or early 70s, spoke up with his perspective on the technical qualities of these vehicles. According to him, the Kubalvar, his term for the German truck, was engineering at a high level of sophistication in many ways. It was lighter than some counterparts, more fuel-efficient, and well-suited to desert conditions, thanks in part to its air-cooled engine, which offered advantageous performance in the hot, arid environments of North Africa. Yet, he acknowledged, when it came to the practical demands of modern warfare, the Jeep outperformed the older German designs. Its four-wheel drive capability allowed it to traverse difficult terrain, and its simplicity meant that maintenance was straightforward, requiring fewer spare parts and less technical expertise. Moreover, the Jeep's production capacity was unmatched, allowing the Allies to manufacture vast quantities rapidly, which had significant strategic implications. An elderly officer, perhaps one who had commanded reconnaissance units during the early years of the conflict, nodded thoughtfully as he recalled his experiences. He remembered the first time he and his unit captured a Jeep in 1941. Initially, they dismissed the vehicle as crude and primitive compared to their own, heavily armed German machinery. It took months to realize that the vehicle's simplicity was its greatest strength, an elegant form of efficiency that allowed ease of repair and reliability under battle conditions. By 1943, as the war raged on, almost every American military unit eagerly sought to acquire captured Jeeps, recognizing that they performed better in combat scenarios than many German vehicles. Another veteran added a poignant reflection. The most sobering realization for him was understanding the scale of American manufacturing. He knew that the United States was producing more Jeeps in a single week than Germany was generating Kubalvars in an entire year. This stark disparity, he explained, was not merely an issue of vehicle performance but of sheer industrial capacity. It was a mathematical certainty that the Allies could replace their losses faster than the Axis powers could replace theirs, rendering the German logistical and material advantages increasingly irrelevant as the war progressed. From these discussions, a consensus emerged among the veterans. While the Kubalvar was undoubtedly a capable and well-engineered vehicle, it ultimately paled in comparison to the Jeep in terms of production versatility and the strategic advantage it provided. The German soldiers showed considerable respect for the Kubalvar as a piece of machinery, recognizing its technical merits. However, they also acknowledged that the American war effort was driven by something more fundamental: the unparalleled capacity for mass production exemplified by the Jeep and what it throughout history. The prowess of military logistics has often been a determining factor in the outcome of conflicts, and one striking contrast between the armies of different nations has always stood out in how they managed their supply chains. American supply units were revered for their remarkable mobility, capable of advancing or retreating over hundreds of kilometers within a single day, thus maintaining a relentless pace that often outflanked their adversaries. In stark contrast, the German supply convoy system was constrained by the speed of their horses, which, under favorable conditions, could travel only around 30 kilometers in a day, a modest rate that significantly hampered their operational flexibility. When examining the reasons behind their military defeats, high-ranking German commanders consistently pointed to the disparity in material superiority as the primary factor, rather than shortcomings in tactical ingenuity or strategic planning. Indeed, German soldiers displayed exceptional skills, valor, and determination in the face of adversity. Their officers often made sound tactical decisions, carefully considering battlefield maneuvers and troop deployment. However, Their industrial capacity was simply unable to match the relentless flow of supplies and equipment that the vastly larger and better equipped enemy could provide. It was this imbalance in material resources, more than anything else, that sealed their fate. A vivid symbol of this material disparity came in the form of the Jeep. To every German soldier who encountered one, the Jeep represented a tangible reminder of American logistical dominance. It was a vehicle so plentiful that, to Americans, it was almost disposable, so dependable that it required only minimal maintenance, and so straightforward to operate that soldiers with minimal training could fix or drive it without difficulty. The Jeep's simplicity and reliability meant that German units often preferred to use captured Jeeps over their own vehicles whenever circumstances allowed, recognizing their superior practicality and general efficiency. By the year 1976, the United States Army began phasing out the Jeep, replacing it with the more modern HMMWV, or High Mobility Multipurpose Wheeled Vehicle, which built upon the legacy of durability and versatility that the Jeep had established over its remarkable 35-year service life. The Jeep's longevity was extraordinary for any military vehicle. Many still remained in use within reserve units and Allied militaries decades later, standing as enduring testaments to its robust design and importance in 20th-century warfare. In the same year, the German automaker Volkswagen marked an important milestone by celebrating the production of its 1 millionth VW Golf. This vehicle, much like the legendary Beetle before it, embodied a synthesis of technological precision and mass production efficiency, an approach that had played a vital role in rebuilding Germany from the ruins of war. The lessons learned through this process distinguished itself as a fusion of meticulous engineering with manufacturing efficiency, ideas that originated from and were refined by both German craftsmanship and American industrial methods. By the dawn of the 1980s, West Germany had firmly established itself as one of the world's leading economic powers, with its automotive industry at the forefront. German automakers exported millions of vehicles annually, and the reputation for producing cars of exceptional quality and reliability had become synonymous with German manufacturing. Yet, behind this reputation lay a significant influence from the United States, whose innovations in assembly line techniques and production management had era-defining impacts on German industry, blending American efficiency with German engineering. The final reunion of World War II's Africa Corps veterans took place in the year 1998. Fewer than 25 veterans, all now in their 70s or 80s, gathered to reminisce about conflicts that had ended more than half a century earlier. During this gathering, someone mentioned that a nearby museum had recently acquired a well-restored Willys MB Jeep, a relic of that bygone era. Most of the aging veterans expressed a strong desire to see the vehicle, and they gathered around it with reverent curiosity. These men, once young soldiers fighting across the African deserts, now examined the Jeep with a mix of admiration and nostalgia, their faces reflecting long-forgotten memories of combat and camaraderie. As they looked, some reached out with trembling hands, touching the vehicle's hood, the familiar lines of a machine that had played a crucial role in their wartime experiences. One veteran, his voice tinged with nostalgia, shared, "I captured one of these back in '42, drove it for nearly 3 months before I was wounded at El Alamein. It was the best vehicle I ever operated, better than anything we had back then." His words hung in the air as others nodded in agreement, sharing similar memories. Another veteran, his eyes filled with reflection, recalled, "I examined one of these right before we surrendered in Tunisia. I couldn't believe how simple the design was, truly remarkable." His tone suggested a newfound appreciation for the vehicle's engineering, which in that simplicity held a depth of ingenuity. He added, "We had a realization then, our approach to vehicle design was all wrong. Everything was too complicated, difficult to produce, and harder still to maintain. One of the veterans, with a faint smile, mentioned, they made over 600,000 of these Jeeps. And for these veterans, the significance of the vehicles extended far beyond simple military hardware. They embodied a symbol of technological and industrial superiority that had decisively contributed to their defeat. To them, these machines represented the formidable production capacity that had overwhelmed their own forces, the advanced engineering principles that proved more effective, and the sheer abundance of resources that had turned scarcity into surplus. One seasoned veteran finally remarked, "We never had vehicles like this," a statement that carried with it a weight of pride and admiration. He elaborated that nowhere in their own experience had they seen such a scale of production, nor such reliability and endurance, nor vehicles designed with the same underlying philosophy of efficiency. Their own manufacturing efforts were rooted in the pursuit of perfection, whereas these American vehicles were built with a singular focus on mass production, ensuring that quantity did not come at the expense of essential functionality. This realization was not incidental. It was a profound lesson learned from the meticulous study of captured Jeeps, vehicles that veteran mechanics had examined amidst the sands of North Africa, the rugged mountains of Italy, and the expansive fields of France. These experiences ingrained a crucial understanding that shaped the post-war rebuilding of Germany and influenced engineering and manufacturing practices worldwide. For the mechanics, the Jeep was more than just transport, it was an educational tool, revealing the principles of effective functional engineering. Humbled by defeat, the Wehrmacht mechanics, once confident in the supremacy of their own engineering, which they believed to be more refined, proved to be remarkably quick learners. They turned their focus not only to the maintenance of the American equipment but also to understanding the underlying reasons for its superior design. They studied what choices had been made and what these choices signified about the manufacturing philosophies that had led to victory. In doing so, they began to understand that victory on the battlefield had roots not only in individual skills or technological supremacy but in systemic approaches to design and production. This difficult but crucial knowledge became the foundation upon which Germany could rebuild itself. The shock of defeat instilled humility, while the lessons gleaned from American equipment instilled a new appreciation for functional engineering. The synthesis of these insights resulted in a new German technological philosophy, one that prioritized practicality, simplicity, and manufacturability over pre-war notions of superiority rooted in prestige and complexity. The story of the Wehrmacht mechanics and the Jeep is thus a narrative of transformation driven by defeat and subsequent learning. It challenged the long-held belief that German engineering was inherently superior, a belief that quality would naturally triumph over quantity, and that sophisticated systems would inevitably surpass simpler designs. Reality proved otherwise. While American vehicles might not have demonstrably outperformed German counterparts in every technical specification, they excelled in key areas critical to modern warfare, being produced in enormous quantities, easy to maintain by personnel with minimal training, assembled with common interchangeable parts, and capable of reliable operation under harsh conditions. This combination of robust functionality and mass manufacturing created a material advantage so overwhelming that no amount of German ingenuity, skill, or valor could compensate. Despite possessing excellent soldiers, capable officers, and advanced equipment, Germany lacked the systemic capacity to sustain a total war effort that could match the relentless, rapid production engine of the United States. Their industrial and logistical deficiencies left them vulnerable in the long run. The mechanics who had maintained both German and American vehicles gained invaluable insights through first-hand experience. They had observed both systems in operation, worked with vehicles designed according to fundamentally different philosophies, and understood which approach yielded better performance under the brutal realities of combat. Their accumulated knowledge guided their efforts in rebuilding Germany's industrial sectors, emphasizing the importance of standardization and simplification, principles that would ensure efficiency, ease of repair, and wartime scalability. When these expert mechanics trained new generations, they imparted lessons learned from their harsh experiences, lessons about the necessity of designing for mass production and straightforward maintenance. When they participated in redesigning processes for German vehicles and machinery, they actively promoted strategies that prioritized manufacturability and reliability. The engineers involved in reconstructing Germany's industrial and automotive sectors closely studied what they could learn from American machinery, adapting successful features to fit their own economic and geographic realities, knowing that these designs had been proven in the fiercest combat conditions. In the end, the period of reconstruction was marked by a conscious effort to integrate the insights gained from losing and winning, forging a new engineering ethos rooted in pragmatism and efficiency. The lessons of defeat, combined with the invaluable education provided by American equipment, fundamentally changed the German approach to manufacturing, transforming their technological perspective from pride-laden hubris into a realistic, function-oriented pragmatism, one that would serve the nation far better in the challenging years of recovery and growth ahead. In the vast expanse of the North African desert, German military mechanics faced an unexpected and intriguing discovery: a captured American Jeep. As they closely examined this remarkable vehicle, which had been taken from the enemy lines, they were not merely scrutinizing a piece of machinery. They were witnessing a symbol of a revolutionary approach to manufacturing and design. This humble yet sophisticated vehicle represented more than just transportation. It embodied a new philosophy rooted in American ingenuity that would leave a lasting imprint on Germany's post-war revival. Through detailed observation of the Jeep's construction, the German technicians gleaned insights into the principles underlying American manufacturing methods. They noticed the meticulous precision with which the vehicle was assembled, but more importantly, they recognized the efficiency embedded in its design. The American approach combined a keen attention to detail, characteristic of German engineering, with a relentless emphasis on streamlined, mass production processes that prioritized consistency and reliability. This hybrid of methods proved to be remarkably effective, creating a machine that was both durable and easy to produce in large quantities. By the 1970s, this integration of German craftsmanship with American efficiency had transformed West Germany into one of the world's leading exporters of manufactured goods. The economic turnaround validated the lessons learned from history's harshest experiences. Germany had come to recognize that the roots of its earlier failures lay in overconfidence and pride, an attitude that had contributed significantly to its defeat. In response, German industry abandoned these dangerous illusions and adopted a more pragmatic, results-oriented approach, one inspired by a careful study of the victorious nation's models. The Jeep played a pivotal role in this transformation by providing a concrete example of effective design and manufacturing philosophy. Every German mechanic who maintained a captured Jeep in North Africa absorbed vital insights about American engineering principles. Each officer who rode in a captured vehicle saw firsthand its advantages in simplicity and functionality. And every soldier who observed the abundance of Allied vehicles recognized, perhaps for the first time, what propaganda efforts had attempted to obscure: that the strength of the opposition was rooted not solely in superior tactics or numbers, but significantly in superior technological and manufacturing strategies. These shared experiences, hundreds of thousands of German soldiers and prisoners witnessing the real-world utility and durability of Allied vehicles, fostered a widespread understanding that the core reason for Germany's military defeat was material inferiority rather than just tactical shortcomings. This realization profoundly influenced attitudes towards rebuilding the nation's industries. German leaders and engineers consciously chose to adapt American manufacturing methods instead of reverting to the pre-war approaches, which had fallen short of modern demands. They consciously shifted their focus to mass production, emphasizing scalability and reliability over meticulous craftsmanship aimed solely at perfection. Instead of domestic artisanship and small-scale manufacturing, they designed vehicles and equipment optimized for large-scale assembly, making the process itself more efficient and less susceptible to error. The mechanics who first encountered jeeps in North African deserts could not have anticipated that this initial attempt to understand an enemy vehicle would trigger a transformative wave impacting global manufacturing standards for decades to come. In their efforts to understand and evaluate this new type of vehicle, these mechanics uncovered fundamental truths about engineering and production capacity that would ripple through their personal lives and shape their entire nation's recovery. They learned that engineering designed for mass production could be superior to custom-made perfection, that reliability and practicality often trump superficial complexity. Though the last of these German mechanics has since passed on, their direct experiences and insights are forever etched into the fabric of modern manufacturing. Every vehicle designed today for ease and efficiency bears a trace of the principles exemplified by the Jeep. Every standardized part, every emphasis on durability and ease of maintenance, echoes the influence of American manufacturing standards that the soldiers and engineers learned from their encounters with this iconic vehicle. The Jeep's lasting legacy is not merely technological but philosophical. It taught that assumptions of superiority based solely on sophistication require rigorous examination. It reaffirmed the importance of functional effectiveness over aesthetic extravagance and demonstrated that designing vehicles for ease of manufacture and ongoing maintenance ultimately yields more sustainable and reliable results than striving for unmatched perfection at the expense of practicality. These lessons catalyzed Germany's transition from a defeated enemy into a prosperous, reinvigorated partner in the global economy. The humble mechanics who once admitted they had never seen a vehicle quite like the Jeep became unwitting architects of Germany's post-war renewal. Their humility, born from the recognition of past failures and sharpened by their first-hand observations, served as a more effective foundation for rebuilding their country than the arrogance that had once led it to ruin. Their insights, gleaned amidst the desert sands of North Africa, would underpin a philosophy that would influence industries worldwide. In the late autumn of 1942, as they examined yet another captured Jeep under the relentless African sun, these Wehrmacht mechanics began to grasp an enduring truth: that innovation often springs from unexpected sources, and that humility and pragmatism are vital components of national recovery. The lessons they learned from this simple yet ingeniously designed vehicle would reverberate well beyond the desert, shaping industries and inspiring a global shift towards manufacturing that prioritizes efficiency, durability, and collective progress. The pioneers of exploration embarked on a profound journey of discovery that was destined to leave a lasting impact on an entire generation. These trailblazers, primarily the mechanics who operated and maintained the captured Jeeps, openly confessed that they had never encountered machines quite like those before. This frank admission served as a crucial turning point, signaling an awakening of insight and understanding. It was this newfound wisdom, born from recognizing the true potential of these extraordinary vehicles, that ultimately laid the groundwork for rebuilding a nation. Their recognition of the Jeep's unmatched capabilities became a catalyst for innovation and progress, shaping a future defined by resilience and ingenuity.